Well, we've already started, and thank you all so much for being here. We have a very special guest, Pastor Eddie Hypolite, and in our introduction of the speaker, he hails to us all the way from Australia. We're so pleased to have you with us. And I just thought I'd ask you three quick questions so that people can get to know you a little better.
Sure.
First off is, how did you get into the ministry?
I was actually, I had come back to church at 25. I wanted to go into probation work because I wanted to go into prisons to work with prisoners, and Spirit just kind of closed it down. I was saved at 17 under the preaching of the late, great Dick Barron. And between 17 and 19, I was actually on my way to Oakwood, but I left the church at 19. Coming back at 25, I sensed my calling to ministry again. But like I said, I wanted to go into probation work, but God just closed all of those doors, and I ended up at NCU. And, you know, it was the affirmation. Actually, it was the affirmation of really good mentors, and the affirmation of some of my elders who said, no, this is, and my peers who said, no, this is your calling. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up moving towards ministry and answering the call.
It's amazing. When God wants you, he wants you. You know what I mean? There's no escape.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Indeed. Second question, what is the number one thing on your bucket list that you would love to do?
I think one of the things on my bucket list is to actually go to Antarctica. Funnily enough.
Okay. Yeah. Any particular reason why?
Then I would have covered all the continents. It's the only continent that I haven't been on, but I heard that it's beautiful. I heard that it's absolutely beautiful in its bleak way. So yeah, I'd love to visit it for those two reasons.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well, dress warmly, man. Dress warmly if you do it. Dress warmly.
Trust me, man.
Definitely.
Double brief.
There you go.
Double thermals.
Right. And the very last question is, what is your favorite sport?
Basketball, by far. You know what I mean? It's my favorite sport to play. I grew up in England, so I grew up around football. But yeah, basketball by far is my favorite sport.
All right. So say a prayer for the Raptors for us. Yes. So
definitely.
Well, once again, thank you for being here, and I believe the floor is yours. So take it away and bless us with your ministry. Thank you so much.
All right. It's a blessing to be with you all again. Thank you, Orlando, for having me in this space. Thank you for Chris, for being such a good host. So I'm thinking about the way we're talking about kind of coming back to a sense of normalcy, and normalcy being around the things that we normally do. But I think normalcy has to begin with reclaiming our sense of who we are, regardless of what we're able to do or not. And who we are focuses itself around our values. It focuses itself around our vision for ourselves. It focuses itself around the type of men that we believe God wants us to be in any space that we find ourselves in, whether as fathers, whether as single men, whether as husbands, whether as partners, in whichever context we find ourselves in, as leaders, as ministers, as elders, as deacons, in any sphere of influence and leadership. Coming back to normalcy is about coming back to those things that demand our attention, regardless of what's happening, regardless of the fact that we are restricted, or that, you know, the pandemic has created this sense of just uncertainty about everything, whether we can travel, whether we can't travel, you know, whether or not there's going to be more lockdowns. Regardless of all of that happening in here, that's where we lock down our first sense of normalcy. Because like I said, regardless of what life does, and regardless of where life finds us, we still have to have that keen sense of who we are. And so being invited to talk about mentoring, for me, is about understanding that sense of normalcy. It's about reclaiming that sense of normalcy in our human relationships. the one thing that this pandemic has done is rob us of the value of human interaction and human connectedness. It's robbed us of its beauty. It's robbed us of its simplicity. And it's also woken us up to the fact that we just took it so much for granted. Even introverts who don't like being around people are like, all right, I need to be around somebody. Even if it's just to remind myself of why I don't like being around people, but I need to be around somebody once again. So I'm going to talk about mentoring from the perspective of being you for them as a mentor, and sharing your not just your life, but sharing your journey. And if you've got pen and paper, I want you to get the pen and paper out, because we're going to do a reflective in a couple of we're going to do a reflective in a minute or two. So let's look at say again.
Just switch the view. You're showing the other side.
Oh, I am. Yeah, I had a feeling I would have been doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
No
so
problem.
let me bring you back over here.
Yeah.
Let me bring you back over here. My mind told me not to do that, you know, but it's going to take more than one of us to do this. Yeah. So. All right.
Good now.
Am I still doing it?
Good. Good.
Are we good? All right.
Yep.
All right. Good. We're good. We're good. We're good. Let's look at two texts. One that you probably know, one that you haven't seen before. Ecclesiastes, two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. If they fall, one will lift up the other. But woe to the one who is alone and falls and does not have anyone to help them. Again, if two lie together, they can keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? I like the Jamaican proverb, one hand can't clap. I love that proverb. And though one might prevail against another, two will withstand one. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. The second one actually was one that I found when I was recovering from a nephrectomy. That's the removal of your kidney. They found a cancerous tumor in my kidney in 2007. And I had it removed in 2008. And while I was in recovery at home for those months, I came across this text: know well the condition of your flocks and give attention to your herds, for riches do not last forever, nor a crown for all generations. When the grass is gone and the new growth appears and the herbage of the mountains is gathered, the lambs will provide your clothing and the goats the price of a field. There will be enough goat's milk for your food, for the food of your household and the nourishment of your servant girls. That text really struck me deeply, because up until then, I hadn't really given much attention to the legacy that I was creating. I was just so busy and so involved in ministry and so involved in everything that I was doing. And once I was off sick, I just saw that the church just rolled on. Everything rolled on without me. I was like, what? And it was a real epiphany for me of me understanding, first of all, that I am not the picture. I am a part of a bigger picture. And then also understanding, what is it that you're pouring into other people that is going to outlast you? Because that's what this text is saying. Like, know well the condition of your flocks, give attention to your herds, because you ain't going to be here forever. You ain't going to be here forever. But the things that you do while you're here, they can actually have effect after you've gone. And that had such a profound effect on me in terms of shaping, consistently shaping in my mind. What is it that I'm learning from God? What is it that the kingdom is teaching me? And what is it that I am pouring from my learning into the life of other people? Especially then, how am I bringing people alongside me in meaningful and extended ways so that they too can benefit and find their benefit from what I'm learning, but also find their own way of understanding that and continuing that. Jesus said, the things that I have done, you will do also. John said, look, I must decrease, but he's going to increase. So you consistently see all the way through scripture that there is this idea that you, while you are here, must make the difference in the life of somebody. You must always prepare where you stand for the generation that comes. That doesn't devalue where you stand, but it does give greater meaning to you standing there. You prepare it, you raise the level, because you've stepped into somebody else, you've stepped on the shoulders of somebody else, so you are already elevated. But then you elevate it so that somebody can step on yours, step on your shoulder. So we're going to do a self-reflective right now. If you've got some pen and paper, we're going to do a self-reflective. And what we're going to do, we're going to discover the me right now, and I want you to think about your core values. So this is how we're going to discover the me right now. Number one, I want you to get a piece of paper and basically reproduce this. 3 circles across the top, 1 or 3 boxes across the top, 1 underneath. And we're going to look at the things that define. Do not fill in the me right now. Do not fill in the me right now. That's the last thing that you're going to do. But for now, let's look at the 3 boxes. Fill up 3 boxes across the top. I want you to think about what are the things that define you. And let's keep it recent. Let's keep it recent. Over these past couple of years, especially during the pandemic, let's take it from 2019 all the way through to now. What have been the things that have defined you? What are the things that define you? And the things that define you are the things that say who you are, the things that have become evident, very much self-evident in the way in which you are navigating life, the way in which you are responding to people. Did I do that, or did somebody just write in my square there? Was that me? No. What are the things that define you? What are some of the things that define you? In the second box, what I want you to think about are, what are the experiences that have shaped you? What are the experiences that have shaped you? What is it that you've been through? Positive, negative, good, bad, indifferent. But what are some of the experiences over the past 3 years that have shaped you? I want you to think about that. Along with that, I want you to think about the things that move and motivate you. What are the things that move as a man? What are the things that move and motivate you? So the things that define me, what are some of the things that define you in the space in which you find yourself now? What are some of the things that define you? And then what are some of the experiences that have shaped you over the past couple of years? 2020, I came into it with, I was with Orlando in Toronto 2019, and we just kept on talking, and we were saying, boy, next year ain't just a whole new year, it's a whole new decade. And we were just like, I know, but it's a whole new decade. And I had plans for kingdom domination over the next year, over the next decade, beginning with 2020. I had my calendar planned out, everything. I was in New York in February, speaking and doing consultancy down there when this whole virus started just shutting down the planet. And I made it back into Australia just as they shut the door behind me. And then I watched over the period of 1 week, I watched my whole calendar disappear in front of me. People calling me, people emailing me, and I work for myself. So, when you work for yourself, if you don't work, you don't get paid. I don't work for a company, and so that had a profound effect. Number one, on my income. Number two, it had a profound effect on my mental space. But then on the flip side of it, it had a profound effect on the way I had to go about the process of like, okay, how do I reinvent myself in an online space? And what do I do in order to motivate myself in an online space? And it was a big shaper. It was a big experience shaper. The things that move and motivate, the things that have moved and really motivated me over these past years is watching how people have come through, literally come through, reinvent themselves, how people have found themselves under a cloud and worked themselves out of it, how churches have gone through the difficult space of having difficult conversations about where they find themselves now, you know, people wanting to rush back to get back to church, and you know, and courageous leaders saying, rush back to get back to what? We ain't even talked about who we were before the pandemic, and we're rushing to get back to that. Come on now, you know, and it's been beautiful. It's been beautiful to watch that. So you've looked at the things that define you, the experiences that have shaped you, and the things that move and motivate you. So this is how we're going to find the me right now. It's interesting that the things that define, the experiences that shape, and the things that move and motivate all happen consistently within the context of past, present, and future. We are consistently being defined by things past, present, and future. We are being shaped by experiences, past, present, and hoped for in the future. We are being moved and motivated by things past, present, and our desire for the future. We are constantly moving in those one space. But the only space that you actually get to define any of those and to really come to terms with any of those are in the present. Because you can't go back and change your past. The past is what it is. And you have no control over a future that isn't here yet. You can dream about it, but you have no control over it because it isn't here yet. And you can't live in a future that hasn't yet resolved itself or that hasn't yet come to pass. You can dream about that future, but what you do have is what Jesus says is now. That's why he says, take no heed for tomorrow and all of that, especially tomorrow. Why? Because today, all the pressure that you need and all the growth that you need and all the gift that you need is in right now. What you do have is the immediate. In the immediate, we can look back and resolve. In the immediate, we can look forward and recalibrate. But we do that in the present. So this is how we're going to find the me right now. I want you to take a couple of things from the things that define and put it in the me right now. Two things from the things that define and put it in the me right now. I want you to take two things from the experiences that have shaped and put it in the me right now. And I want you to take a couple of things from the things that move and motivate and put it in the me right now. Using all three boxes on top, I want you to take from there and create a picture of the me right now, of the you right now, from the things that define, the experiences that have shaped, from the things that move and motivate. I want you to create a picture of the me right now. So do that for me. And then let me have a look and see what it is. Then let's see how you feel about that. How you feel about that. I said 7 minutes. Oh, but maybe we go to about 8. Yeah. We got enough time. What snaps? It's 8 minutes already. And me right now, before we talk about the me right now, what are your core values? What are your core values? What are the core values that you at least live by or aspire to live by? You know, I want you to write down some of your core values. Core values are who you are in public and private. Core values isn't a suit that you put on to come to church with, or, you know, like we put on a suit to come to church. Core values is how you dress day in and day out. You know, so if your core value is loyalty, or your core value is hard work, or your core value, you know, is trust, or your core value is family, your core value is community, Your core value is integrity. What are your core values that you live by, or at least you're aspiring to live by? I want you to write down your core values. The me right now and core values. Then I want to say something about the me right now, whichever me right now may be looking back at you, especially within the context of mentoring. Okay, let me say this about the me right now. If you're looking at the me right now and you're saying, yes, I love this person, that's good, because that person can grow and that person can still mature. If you're looking at the me right now and you're like, yeah, all right, okay, yeah, you can work with him, that's good, because that person can grow and that person can still mature. But if you're looking at the me right now and you're like, Lord have mercy, who is this person, man? Gosh, it's 2022 and it's still this person. That's good, because that person can still grow and that person can still mature. Whether you're elated, whether you're midway or middle of the road, or whether you're absolutely distraught with who you're looking back. The important thing and the common denominator between all three reactions is that you understand who the me right now is. You've had an honest conversation about the me right now. This is a face value. This is a face value self-critique. So if this was for a job interview, you would be giving me all the answers you think you want me to hear. But this is you talking to you. I'm not going to ask you to share this on here. I'm just going to ask you to share this with yourself in the privacy of your mind. And you've had an honest conversation about who the me right now is. It's the me right now that comes to mentoring. It's the me right now with the core values that you have that come into this space. It's the me right now. And it's important to understand that. It's important to understand that from the perspective of mentoring, because it is the me right now. It is the me right now. It is the me right now with your core values that come to that space of mentoring, that come to that space of sharing yourself and sharing your life with other people. I've skipped over one slide, but that's all right. That's all right. So how do we know the me right now? The importance is knowing the me right now and knowing several things about the me right now. Number one, knowing your strengths. All right, is this me that's doing this? That's writing on my thing here. Knowing your strengths. It's important that you have a sense of what your strengths are. Knowing the me right now is about knowing your strengths. Knowing the me right now is about knowing your capacity for being critical and being critiqued, especially within the idea of mentoring, especially within that space of mentoring. Number one, as a man anyway, but when you are coming now to say you're going to add your life to the life of another person, you're going to pour from your life into another person and allow that person to pour into you also, knowing your capacity for being critical and also for being critiqued. It's about knowing your limitations. It's about knowing that you can't do everything. It's about knowing that you shouldn't want to do everything. It's about knowing that strength is also found in reaching out. That strength is also found in reaching up. Strength is also found in saying, all right, I've come as far as I can, so I need somebody else to step into this breach and help me move on further. It's about knowing your limitations. It's also about knowing your own story. Knowing your own story. I remember I met this guy when I just come back into church. His name was John. He was an ex-heroin addict, ex-cocaine addict. And he was from a family of career criminals. And I had met him 2 years after he had been saved, he found Jesus in prison. It's from Southeast London. I remember him saying to me, Eddie, never forget where you've come from. Never forget where you've come from. And what it was that God did in order to get you to where you are. Never forget that, because that's what you're going to share with the world. Do you hear me, Eddie? Do you hear me? And I'm like, yeah, I hear you, John. Never forgot his words. Never forgot his words. Knowing your own story, and being honest about your own story, not being revisionist about your own story, not being ashamed of your own story. Although sometimes people may want to write shame into your story. But knowing the me right now is about knowing your own story. Knowing the me right now is about knowing your motive to mentor and be mentored. Why is it that you want to actually mentor somebody? Why is it that you actually want to be mentored by someone? I believe that everyone on this call, all 48 of us, all 47 of us, should all have mentors. I don't care how old you are. I'm 56, so I know I'm by far not the oldest person in this on this call. And I have people that I mentor, and I have people that mentor me, older than me. All of us, Orlando always laughs when I say it, but I say it and I mean it. A man who does not have a mentor, a man who does not have accountability from another man, is a weapon of mass destruction. Is a weapon of mass destruction. And a man who does not have accountability and cannot be accountable to another person should never be a mentor, because you don't have nothing that you're going to share with anyone. Why? Because you don't actually know your strengths. You don't know your capacity for being critical and being critiqued. You don't know your limitations. You don't know your own story. Why? Because you do not have that space of accountability that makes you sit in a space of honesty with somebody who has gentle hands, but true words, and empowers you to know that. Empowers you to know that because of accountability. So know your motive. And your to mentor and be mentored. That's what knowing the me right now is about. So what is mentoring? Well, this is my definition of it. This is my definition of it. Mentoring is the process and journey of mutual growth and intentional connectedness. Essentially, that's what it is. It's the process and journey of mutual growth. Because it's not just the mentee that's being mentored. It's also the mentor that's actually, it's not just the mentee that is growing. It's also the mentor that is growing. There has to be that synergistic, giving and giving and receiving of growth, because it's about interdependence. It's intentional connectedness. You're intentional about the connectedness. You're intentional about the honesty. You're intentional about the intimacy. You're intentional about the trust and everything that comes with that connectedness. Most people have that kind of conversation between coaching and mentoring. It's coaching, mentoring, is mentoring, coaching. Well, they're kind of two different things. They are two different things. And I want to share this that I found from coaching, from coaching.com. Really good descriptor that they have here. Coaches, they co-create actionable steps with their client. Mentors, they provide advice based on personal, they're more advice based from personal experience. Coaches are professionally trained to tackle any domain of life. Mentors, they're kind of experienced in a specific role or industry. Coaches can be formally engaged. Mentors, they help based on goodwill, usually on an informal basis. Coaches, they strategize methods to handle various situations. Mentors, they take here is what I did approach. Now, I looked at that, and the reason why I use this is because I realized that in a lot of the work that I do, that I get paid for, so many of these things, they kind of cross over. And at the same time, so many of these things just kind of remain separate, depending on who it is that I'm journeying with and why it is that I'm journeying with them. But the overlap between coaches and mentors is that they encourage self-improvement and they provide a safe place or a safe setting for honest sharing. One of the things with mentoring that is really important for us to understand, it's this. If you struggle with being honest, if you struggle with vulnerability, and vulnerability isn't about telling people your own business, telling people your business. Vulnerability is actually about letting people know, yeah, I bleed too. I bleed too. It's about letting people know that I do have my own times of self-doubt and my own times of self-weakness. But this is the way. If you struggle with doing that, you're gonna really struggle with being a mentor or being a coach, because you have to have that level of vulnerability where people can see either your scars or just seeing that you bleed. There's no way, there's literally no way around that. You don't believe me? Look at Jesus. Look at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, yeah? We often look at that story where Jesus is praying and the disciples are sleeping, and Jesus goes to them and say, stay up and pray. Couldn't you stay up and pray with me? The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. For so many years, I used to look at that Jesus was saying to them, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I know you want to stay up and pray with me. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. No. Jesus was talking about himself then. Jesus was saying, I'm struggling over there. My spirit is willing, but my flesh is weak. The Father's getting me to drink the cup, and I'm struggling over there. Stay up and pray with me, man. What, you man can't even stay up a one little hour of prayer and pray for me? Jesus was talking about himself. He wasn't talking about them. Their spirit is willing and their flesh is weak. He was saying, my spirit is willing, but my flesh is weak. Pray for me because I'm struggling over here. In the end, they went back to sleep. The Father was like, boy, you better send an angel down there for my boy. An angel had to come down. Angel had to come down and strengthen. Angel had to come down and strengthen. If you are not willing to be that space where you can sit comfortably and say, yeah, spirit is willing, but there are times when my flesh is weak, mentoring isn't for you. Mentoring isn't for you. Mentoring in a connected, intimate journey, process-based journey, maybe it isn't going to be for you, because you have to be able to show that side of your humanity. You have to be able to show. And there are like massive biblical examples of mentoring. And these are some that I have written up, but I know that there are a ton more, that we could think of as we think through the Bible. Iron sharpens iron, what one man sharpens another. Two are better than one, which was our text. I love where Paul spoke to Timothy, and what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. That's the process of mentoring. That's the process of mentoring. Even unto old age and gray hairs, oh God, do not forsake me until I proclaim your might to another generation, your power to those to come. I love that. Be imitators of me as I imitate Christ. Beautiful, beautiful. You have to be close enough to people in order to do that. I always say to young ministers and young leaders, if you're going to speak life into people, you have to do life with people. You have to do life with people if you're going to speak life into people. So the question is, why do some avoid the mentoring journey? Why do some avoid the mentoring journey? Well, I think, and I've spoken about it already, they're because of exposure and vulnerability. They actually don't want to be seen. They don't want, the mentor sometimes doesn't want to be seen. The person being mentored doesn't want the person to see them. Exposure and vulnerability are two things that I've seen historically that have caused people to avoid being mentored. The other one is the time and the commitment involved. I remember there were these two young preachers. When I was pastoring in London, we had started Kennington Community Fellowship. And it was just a beautiful church, dynamic church, young, dynamic. I was under the tutelage of Dr. E.L. Henry, and his words to me were, I do not want, I was an intern at Brixton. He was the pastor at Brixton Church. And his exact words to me were, I do not want this church to look, sound, or feel anything like the mother church. Do something totally new here. And he gave us a blank check. Anyway, about 2.5 years in, there was these two young preachers coming up in London, two young people coming up in London. Good preachers, good boys. They came to me like the rich young ruler. And, Pastor Ed, we really want to come and we want to, preach at your church. But, how can we get to be a part of Kennington? Now, what I knew they wanted was to be in my pulpit. That's what they wanted. They wanted to be in my pulpit. And I said to them, all right, let me think about it. Saw them about a week later. And I said, guys, listen, I've worked out something in my mind for your program. I said, what I want you to do is I want you to just, all your preaching appointments that you have, I want you to cancel all your preaching appointments. I want you to come to Kennington, and I want you to get involved in a small group in Kennington and one of our ministries. I want you to come week after week and just be involved in the life of the church. What I'll do then is I will put you to teach Sabbath school. We used to teach Sabbath school from the front. We never had classes. We taught from the front, one teacher teaching from PowerPoint. And then we had groups that would break out and then come back to the one teacher. That way, what we did was we had focused teaching. People in their classes could talk, and we was able to deal with any heretics that was in in Sabbath school with all their foolishness. But it was directed. I said, I will get you and you will become one of our Sabbath school teachers, and then I will put you in the pulpit, Well, I mean, I see them yet. They went away sorrowing, for they had many preaching appointments. You know what I mean? I never saw them yet. And it's interesting. Both of them went up to Oakwood to study ministry. Neither of them are in ministry now. One changed from theology to business, and the other one just dropped out. Sometimes it's the time and commitment involved, not only in mentoring, but in being mentored, why some people just avoid the mentoring journey. The other one is overdependence on the mentor, overdependence, or the mentored. You just overdependent. You can't think, you can't do nothing without referring to them. And then the last one that I found is projection and being projected upon. People just don't like, being projected upon, wish you were like, or you should be like, or being made to feel in that way that they're being projected upon, or there's so much level of projection in the way that they're doing, being mentored. There are two truths, and it is this. Number one, mentoring and being mentored is unavoidable. It's unavoidable in leadership, ministry, and faith life. We are not wired as human beings to be alone anyway. We are wired to be in interdependent living, interdependent existence, So mentoring is really, it's unavoidable, because the very nature of Christian life and faith is interdependent. What did Jesus say? He said, I am the vine, you are the branches. Jesus is moving us from independence to interdependence. The branches cannot exist without the vine, but the vine chooses to not exist without the branches. Interdependence. And so, mentoring and being mentored is unavoidable. Why? because we are called to interdependence. We are called to allow the life from us to flow into someone else. Yeah. Martin Luther King says life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? What are you doing for others? So, what next? What next? I suppose we do life by the questions. We do life by the questions. So here are some of the questions for you. Whose lives do I need to bring together? Whose lives? You're sitting here thinking like, all right, that one would be a brilliant mentor, and he would or she would benefit so much from interaction. Whose lives do you need to bring together? What budgets do you need to bring together? Your church leaders, you know, what budgets do you need to bring together? What wouldn't Jesus do? Not what would Jesus do. In this idea of mentoring, what wouldn't Jesus do? What wouldn't Jesus be doing in this moment in which we find ourselves? What wouldn't he be doing? Who or where do I need to be pouring time into? Who or where do I need to be pouring as a man sitting in this space, as a leader sitting in this space? Who or where do I need to be pouring time into? Who do I need to seek out as a mentor? Who do you need to seek out as a mentor? When people, you know, people say, you know, so-and-so could really do with, you know, mentoring from you. I said, they need to come and ask me. And it's not because I think that I'm enough. It's not because some type of, oh, he's Eddie Hypolite, well, he has to be asked. Yeah, I do have to be asked. Because I need you to give me permission to speak into your life. And when you go to somebody and you ask them to mentor, what you are doing is giving them permission, because we may have to have honest conversations. We may have to have conversations that you don't like, but you know that because of the regard that I have for you, because of the journey that we are on, you know that my desire is to see you grow. My desire is to see you level up. My desire is to see you break old habits and create new ones. My desire is to see you scrub out that story and write a better story. My desire is to see you take the pen that God's trying to put in your hand and begin writing, you know. And so who do I need to seek out? Who do you need to seek out as a mentor? What is my obligation to this current generation, to this current and the next generation? What is my obligation? Because we all have obligations. We all have obligations. What can I contribute to my community's growth? And not just your church community, the community in which you live. Not the community where your church is, the community where your house is. Because most of us don't live where our church is anyway. We're commuters, you know. And maybe one of the things that you need to be thinking about during this pandemic is, all right, how do I actually plug into my community? And if there isn't a church here, but there are so many of us as families who live in this community, maybe we need to start a church here and allow our community to benefit from our presence. But that's a whole other discussion. That's a whole other discussion. But what can I contribute to my community's growth? Where can I make an impact? These are some of the ideas of what's next. These are some of the thoughts on what's next and where we go next. Let me share three of my mentors. Pastor Colin Stewart. I met Colin when I was 17 years old. I had come into the church under the preaching of Dick Barron. There was a revival that took place through his preaching that led on to a youth evangelistic series. Colin, he is 7 years older than me. He was one of the leaders, him and a guy called Randall Lunan. And he's been my mentor, my big brother, since I was 17 years old. When I left the church during my 20s when I was incarcerated, he was the only church person that came and visited me. The only church person that came and visited me. Only church person that came and visited me. when I went back, while I was away, he and a whole bunch of other guys had gone into ministry that I used to run with. And when I got back and I went into ministry, went to West Indies College, NCU, he was in his final year. We both came back to England and we pastored. And then we ended up in the youth department. He was the youth director. I was his teen director. And we did some revolutionary things. Revolutionary. So revolutionary, we only served one term. So revolutionary, we only served one term. Hey, if you see the generations of ministers that went into ministry because of that ministry. Hey, Colin Stewart, lifelong brother, lifelong big brother and mentor. Then there was Dr. E.L. Henry. He was the senior, he was the head of department at NCU in my final year. He had retired from England, went back to Jamaica, and Dr. Thompson, the president at the time, said, listen, we don't have a head of department at the moment. Do you mind being the interim while we look for a head of department? He said, sure. And he was our teacher in my final year. Oh, it was so beautiful. We used to call him Cool Cat. I remember we was doing systematic theology with him and we was ready for him. His first class came in, he was very particular about everything that he did. He would look over his glasses at you like this. He was very particular, put down his bags, you know, and we had studied up all the theologians, Karl Barth, Schleiermacher, people that you can't even pronounce, and you know, because if you try, you're going to spit in their face. And he had his chalk and he just wrote up on the board, G-O-D, and underlined it. And he said, okay, explain that. Lord of mercy, it was just silence. We weren't ready for that one. It was like, oh, all right, we weren't ready for that question. Ask us about a theologian, but he was brilliant. Brilliant. I had graduated from NCU, went to New Bowl to do the masters, got picked up. In that time, I didn't realize they had found a head of department. So he was coming forward and backward. The president of our conference reached out to him and said, listen, he was retired, you know, reached out to him and said, listen, we need a new pastor, senior pastor over at Brixton Church. Would you be interested? He ended up at Brixton. I ended up as his intern and I was just in intern heaven. And he was the most empowering minister, senior minister, father figure, just visionary minister in terms of what he did, what he allowed me to do at Kennington. And I remember there was one time when he came over to the church, he saw what we were doing, and he said, you know, if I was pastoring here, I wouldn't do that. Then he said, but I can see that it works. So keep on doing that. Visionary. He showed me so deeply in that moment. It's not always for the leader to understand. It's sometimes for the leader to just see that it works and let them do. Visionary. And then Steve Thompson, I met Steve when I first moved here to Australia. He actually was the interim pastor, you know, and I remember the day that I started and he came up to me and he gave me the key, he said, this is yours. And then he slunk off. But he and his wife, Kristen, have been just beautiful friends and mentors to Yvonne and I. And brilliant Old Testament theologian, just like Dr. Henry, Old Testament theologian. Brilliant friend. He texts me every day, every single day. He sends me a Bible text. He and his wife pray for Yvonne and I every day. He sends me a text every day. Kristen sends Yvonne a text every day. And he's a spiritual mentor. When I do my writings, he's my theological critique. He's a brilliant scholar. And just a brilliant person and mentor in my life. I want to share a prayer with you. It's from Psalms 20. It's being called the prayer of the leader. It's also been called the prayer of the king. And so this is my prayer for you. The Lord answer you in the day of trouble. The name of the God of Jacob protect you. May he send you help from the sanctuary and give you support from Zion. May he remember all your offerings and regard with favor your burnt sacrifices. May he grant your heart's desires and fulfill all your plans. And may we shout for joy over your victory. And in the name of our God, set up our banners. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. That's my prayer for you. That's my prayer for you as you seek to be who God would have you be in this moment, as you seek to think about how you pour your life into the life of others. The generation that is here and the generation to come. May you be blessed as you do so. May you be empowered as you do so. And may the name of the God be lifted. May the name of our God be lifted in your life and through your influence. All right, I think that's me. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and come back into the room with you. Come back into the room with you.
That was absolutely awesome. Praise God for that. I think we learned, we're blessed and learned something from that. And we're gonna open the. Oh, I was about to say open the phone lines. Open the Zoom chat.
Same thing. Same thing. Sometimes you feel like the same thing.
Right? And like if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask Pastor Hypolite, and he'll be more than happy to answer them for you. Put them in the chat or just raise your hand
Just raise your
so
hand,
we can
yeah.
see it. Yeah, yeah, better so raise your hand so we can see you, and then we'll call you out to thing. I had a question here. When it comes to mentoring and mentorship, as young boys, we make friends faster with other boys and so forth. But as we get older, I don't know if this is true or not, but from my experience, it's harder to make friends and trust in guys as you get older. Do you think it's harder for us as we get older to make friendships with men that you can trust and, talk about things with and so forth?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, the older that I've got, the smaller my circle has become. Mm-hmm. The smaller my circle has become. Sometimes men aren't comfortable in their own skin. And so they're around you or they're around me, and they're constantly comparing, or they're constantly critiquing, or they constantly got a smart word. But I'm just like, all right, you're not comfortable in your own skin. You know what I mean? And so I find it hard to have people around me who are not comfortable in their own skin. And so yeah, your circle does get smaller, but your circle gets smaller because your perception and your understanding of people gets larger. And because it gets larger, you can actually see people from a long way off and bring them into your space. So there isn't a reason why you shouldn't connect with people, because the older you get, the wiser you are supposed to get about how people are and who people are, and then how much you can trust them with. How much you can trust them with and how much you can't trust them with. You're looking for somebody, number one, who has some type of lived experience. You're looking for somebody who doesn't talk people's business. You be around a man, a man who loves to just talk about people's business isn't a man that can be a mentor for you, because the one thing you're critical of is somewhere along the line, you're going to share something really personal. And you do not want your personal stuff to be spread out. You want somebody that is spiritual, not perfect, just spiritual, that knows how to pray, that knows how to be balanced in their spirituality. I think you need somebody that knows how to be honest, but without being brutal. And I think you definitely need somebody who knows how to be patient with with the shortcomings of other people. Who knows how to be patient with the shortcomings of other people. And believe it or not, those people are around us all the time. They're around us all the time. I think it's because we don't see them as big preachers up on the, big people across social media. Well, you ain't got none that you can share with me, but there was when we came to be married, there was a minister that wanted to do our marriage counseling. And he was actually a brilliant minister. We were good friends. But there would be ways that he would talk to his wife when we was in the house, call her name, Susan. Her name is Susan. Hey, Susan, come and fix up something for us, man. We're in here, and he would say it jokingly, but, there were just ways that he would speak to her. I'm just like, no. We can't have you do our marriage counseling. We went and we found an older minister, who, who actually was a parent as well, and, he just doted around his wife. You would have thought that the two of them got married like a year ago, but they had been married something like about 30 years. The man was just like a puppy. The two of them were like two puppies around each other. And, this year we celebrate 29 years of marriage off of their counseling. And so I think you need, those people are around us all the time. They're around us all the time. They're around us all the time.
Wow.
So sometimes the mentoring we may need, though, may be a form of coaching. It may be professional, and you're within either you have some things that you need to be able to think out. You have some things that you need to be able to actually produce. You need some things that you need to be able to achieve. And you need somebody who's actually a professional themselves. You see the work that they do, and you just go and you say to them, listen, I'm working on this project at the moment. Would you be willing to be my mentor? And, they mentor you professionally. And it may be just for a short period of time,
Gotcha.
Or in that space, it's more of a coaching than a mentoring. But sometimes coaching turns actually into mentoring. And where you think that they're going to be with you for 6 months, they actually end up being with you for 10 years, because a different relationship comes out of that professional coaching relationship.
So it sounds like you, as the one asking your mentor, you need to know what you need.
You definitely need to know what you need, and you need to see in them the ability to help you on that journey.
Gotcha.
You need to be able to see in them the ability to help you on that journey.
All right, Lennox, we're gonna hand it over to you. Got a question?
Hey P, how you doing, man?
I'm all right, man.
Good,
I'm all right. Living. Happy New Year.
I'm good. Nice to see you guys. Eddie, thanks again for your presentation. As always, I do appreciate a lot of the things that you put on the table today. My question is specific around generations and the generational divide, pre-Google and post-Google, millennials or post-millennials. It was a natural occurrence for me to seek out somebody who was a little older than me as I was coming up, because that's how I learned things, be around people who had more experiences. So mentorship seemed very natural to me. But I noticed, even on the call today, I see a lot of my peers and people in coming up to 50 or around that 50 age group. And I noticed that the generation 22 to 28, they seem to be very good just Googling it or finding it on YouTube and not making the effort to find mentors or people who can speak some truth into their life. I see young men and women in my church who I know would benefit from mentorship. And it's sometimes difficult for them to even see that they need it. How do we sort of deal with that aspect? I know one experience I'll share, and then I'll let you sort of give your answer, is that I recognize a young man who was missing male role models, and I went to him and I explained what I saw in him. And then I used your advice and I sort of said, listen, I'm here. If you need me to be a mentor, you need to come, let me know. And he was mature enough to come and ask me, and we've had a great relationship going forward. But he's a very special person, and I know that many other young adults don't see the value in that mentorship and aren't on this call and aren't looking for somebody. How do we help them get the growth that they need? Thank you.
You know, the rich young ruler came to Jesus. He had three things going against him. He was rich, he was young, and he had responsibility. You know what I mean? You know, there were three advantages and disadvantages. And he asked Jesus a question. And Jesus said, well, you know, do this. And he said, I've done that my whole life. And then this text said, Jesus looked at him and he loved him, loved that part. And then Jesus said, well, it's only one thing that you lack. Don't sell everything that you have. Give to the poor, come follow me, you know. And what Jesus was saying was like, all Jesus, you know, Jesus was just saying, like, the one thing that you lack is that you're over dependence on everything that you have. It's a generation that have been taught, it's a generation that is being taught self-reliance. But Western self-reliance is narcissism. It's self-reliance to the exclusion of anybody and anybody's wisdom and anybody's ability to help. What happens is they're going to get into their late 20s and going to realize how much of a farce it is. They're going to realize how hollow it is. And I think what we have to do is what the Aboriginal men do here, Aboriginal elders. Aboriginal elders, yeah, Lennox, over here, they say that all of our history is held in the oral tradition, but we do not teach the young until they come and ask us questions. Because when they ask, they are willing to learn. He said, but what we do is that we live all of those lessons to the fullness. And we live our lives in attractive and empowered ways that they're just forced to come and ask us. Like, you know, and ask about the history and ask. And I think that's what we have to do as men in our 40s, as men in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, or, you know, our 40s, 50s, and 60s. We have to band together and we have to create wisdom, we have to create wealth, we have to create attractiveness, we have to create interdependence in such a way that this generation asks us about why we do what we do. Then we invite them in and we teach them, you know, but we have to teach them by showing them lived experience. We have to teach them by showing them lived experience. There are some that you're going to be able to, like what you did, Lennox. There are some that, you know, for us as men, we're going to be able to go alongside them because we see the type of people that they are. And we do understand that, you know, they are actually open. And all they need is for somebody to reach out and to say, listen, I've been seeing what you're doing. Have you thought about such and such? Or I've been seeing what you're doing in your business, you know, like, I don't know, you know, just like Chris, I've been seeing what you've been doing in your business. Have you gone and spoken to Willard Mitchell? Because, you know, he's been doing that for like 30 years. You're like, really? Yeah, go and speak to Willard. He'll be able to help you, you know, and that's what we have to do. We have to join all those connected dots, you know, and that's why I asked, whose life do I need to join together? There are some that's going to be able to do that. But I think, Lennox, the only way that we're going to be able to do it is that we have to band together and bring together all that wisdom, our energy, our old energy, our matured energy, our wisdom, our wealth, and all the things that we do, band it together, you know, and then invite them into it. Do it in such an attractive way that they want to come in to our spaces. And, you know, because in the back of our mind, we're doing it so that you notice it, so that you do come in. And when they come in, we lay a foundation for them to stand on, you know, and then we teach them, this is the way you need to navigate in this world, so that they do it for the next generation. I think, for me, I think that that is one way that we can approach it, Lennox. And that was my very long answer to your very short question.
It was detailed and on point. There you go.
Yes. How do you navigate your need for mentorship and growth as you look to mentor somebody else? Should you first pause and grow? No, do both. This is the model. This hand is the hand that reaches up. This is the hand that reaches up to the person that mentors you. We're mentored by older people. Sometimes we're mentored by our peers. Sometimes we're mentored by our juniors. Sometimes we're mentored by our juniors, you know, but this is the hand that reaches up. This hand pours into you. This hand is the hand that speaks life. This hand is the hand that reaches back because somebody's reaching up to you. This is a hand that, you know, reaches up, that you pour into, that you speak life into, that you journey. But all of us travel at this. But I believe, Jeremy, we do it at the same time. You know, you don't wait to be perfect to do it. You just learn the lessons that you've learned. You figure out what it is, and you continue to grow having learned that lesson and reach out and do it. Yeah, don't pause. Do it at the same time, but do it in that space where you are honest about where you find yourself, about how you grow, you know, that you're creating good circles of creating good male community around you, that are empowering you, speaking life into.